The war had been going badly for 3 months now. Ambassador Keth stood in the central command room of the Galactic Federation headquarters, watching red warning lights flash across the star map. Each light meant another world under attack. Each light meant millions of lives in danger. The Vrex Empire had come from the dark space between galaxies. Their bioships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. Their warriors were worse. They stood twice as tall as most Federation species, with 4 arms ending in razor claws. Their skin was thick armor that could stop most weapons. Worst of all, they seemed to enjoy the killing. "How many worlds have we lost this week?" Keth asked his aide, trying to keep his voice steady. 17 colonies in the Outer Rim," came the reply. "The defense fleets can't hold them back. Every time we fight them, they adapt. They learn from our tactics and become stronger." Keth felt his heart sink. The Federation had been at peace for over 200 years. Most member species had forgotten how to fight real wars. They had police forces and small defense fleets, but nothing like what the Vrex brought to battle. What about the Luminari? Their energy weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy. His aide shook his head. They refuse to fight. Their culture forbids violence of any kind. They offered to provide medical aid and refugee support, but no military help. The Nexari, too fragile. Their crystalline bodies shatter under combat. Stress. A single explosion can kill hundreds of them. The Etherians? They can't survive in solid matter environments. They need gas giant atmospheres to live. Keth walked to the great window that looked out over the Federation capital world. Below him, millions of beings from dozens of species went about their daily lives. They had no idea how close the war was getting to their homes. The outer colonies were already falling. Soon the Vrex would reach the core worlds. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "we're running out of options. The military council is talking about surrender." Surrender? Keth turned around. "The Vrex don't take prisoners. They turn conquered worlds into breeding grounds for their war beasts. Everyone dies." "I know, sir. But what choice do we have?" Keth stared at the star map again. So many species in the galaxy, and none of them could fight. The Federation had grown soft during the long peace. They had forgotten that sometimes violence was necessary to protect the innocent. "Send out an emergency broadcast," he said finally, "to every system in the galaxy. Not just Federation members. Everyone." "Sir?" "Ask for military assistance. Promise them anything they want. Mining rights, trade agreements, technology transfers. Whatever it takes." His aide looked doubtful. "Sir, if the major species can't help us, what makes you think the minor ones can?" "Because maybe someone out there hasn't forgotten how to fight." The broadcast went out that same day. It reached thousands of star systems across the galaxy. The message was simple. The Federation needed warriors. The pay would be good. The cause was just. But the fighting would be dangerous. Most of the responses came back negative within hours. Small species with no military forces. Peaceful traders who had never seen combat. Isolated worlds that were too far away to help. But 3 days later, something unexpected happened. A signal came from a system at the very edge of the galaxy. A place so remote that most Federation computers didn't even have it on their star charts. "Where did this come from?" Keth asked. His aide checked the coordinates twice. "A system called Sol, sir. 3rd planet, designation Earth. It's classified as a Class 12 Deathworld." Keth felt his blood go cold. Class 12 was the highest danger rating in Federation records. Worlds so hostile that no civilized species could survive there. Planets with toxic atmospheres, crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, and deadly native life forms. There can't be anyone living there, he said. The signal is definitely artificial, sir, and it's in response to our broadcast. What do they say? His aide brought up the translation. Message from Commander Deho of the Earth Defense Forces. We received your request for military assistance. We accept the contract. When do you need us? Keth read the message 3 times. It was so short, so simple. No questions about payment, no demands for guarantees. Just acceptance. Run a deep scan on that system, he ordered. I want to know everything about these humans. The scan results came back 6 hours later. Keth could hardly believe what he was reading. Earth was indeed a Class 12 death world. The surface was covered in a liquid that would dissolve most known life forms. The atmosphere contained highly reactive gases that would poison anyone who breathed them. The gravity was 3 times galactic standard. Massive storms regularly destroyed entire continents. And somehow, over 7 billion intelligent beings lived there. How is this possible? He whispered. The data seems accurate, sir. The humans appear to have evolved on this world. They're adapted to conditions that would kill us in minutes. Keth looked at the biological data. Human muscle density was incredible. Their bone structure could handle forces that would crush most species. Their blood carried oxygen in a way that let them function in low-pressure environments. They could survive temperature ranges that spanned from freezing to boiling. What about their military capabilities? Unknown, sir. They use primitive fusion drives for space travel. Their weapons technology appears to be based on chemical explosives and metal projectiles. By our standards, they're centuries behind. That was disappointing. Advanced technology was usually what won wars. But then again, the Federation had the most advanced technology in the galaxy, and they were losing badly to the Vrex. What do we have to lose? Keth said finally. Contact Commander Deho. Tell him we accept their offer. Ask him how many ships he can send. The reply came back faster than expected. We can have a full expeditionary force ready in 2 weeks. 50,000 troops, support staff, and equipment. Just tell us where you need us. 50,000 troops didn't sound like much against the Vrex millions. But these were beings who had survived on a world that would kill most species just by existing there. Maybe they had something the Federation had lost. Maybe they remembered how to fight. Keth authorized the contract and began making preparations. He had no idea what these humans would be like in person. He had no idea if they could actually help win the war, but for the first time in months, he felt something that had been missing from the Federation Command Center. He felt hope. The message went out to the human commander. Proceed to coordinates attached. Federation forces will provide escort and briefing upon arrival. The galaxy is counting on you. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Vrex Empire continued its advance toward the core worlds. They had no idea that something new was coming to meet them. Something that had never known peace. Something that had evolved to thrive where everything else died. The humans were coming to war. Federation liaison Kish had been chosen for this mission because she was considered brave. Her people, the Zanari, were known for their courage and their ability to adapt to different environments. She had visited over 40 different worlds in her career as a diplomatic observer. But as her ship approached the Sol system, she wondered if this time she had bitten off more than she could chew. Readings confirm it, ma'am, her pilot said nervously. That third planet is definitely a Class 12 death world. I'm detecting massive radiation from their star, toxic atmospheric composition, and gravitational fields that would crush most known species. Kix checked her environmental suit one more time. The suit was the most advanced protection the Federation could provide. It would keep her alive in almost any hostile environment for up to 72 hours. She hoped that would be enough. Begin approach to the coordinates the humans provided, she ordered, and keep the engines ready for emergency departure. Earth grew larger in the view screen as they approached. Chicks had seen images from the long-range scans, but seeing it in person was different. The planet looked angry. Massive white spirals of storms covered much of the surface. The blue areas that the humans called oceans looked like pools of acid. The brown and green landmasses were broken up by what appeared to be massive scars in the planet's crust. "How does anything live down there?" the pilot whispered. Before Kitch could answer, her communications board lit up. A voice came through in clear, if accented, galactic standard. "Federation vessel, this is Soul Control. You are cleared for landing at coordinates being transmitted now. Please follow the guide lights and maintain minimum safe distance from civilian traffic." Civilian traffic? Chicks looked at her screens and saw dozens of small craft moving around Earth's orbit. Some were obviously cargo haulers. Others looked like passenger transports. The humans were treating their deadly world like it was just another normal planet. The landing site was a massive complex of buildings and landing pads. As their ship touched down, Kitch could see humans moving around outside in the open air. No environmental suits, no protective gear. They were breathing the poisonous atmosphere and walking around in the crushing gravity like it was nothing. "Ma'am," her pilot said, voice shaking. "The atmospheric readings, they're breathing a gas, mixture that would kill us in seconds. And the gravity, it's reading 3 times galactic standard." "I know," Kitch said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Stay with the ship. I'll make contact and get back as quickly as possible." She stepped out of her ship and immediately felt the weight of Earth's gravity trying to crush her down. Even with her suit's support systems, every step was an effort. The humans watching her approach looked completely comfortable. A tall human male walked up to her. He was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform, but it was lighter than most species would use for ceremonial occasions, let alone on a deadly world. "Welcome to Earth," he said with a smile. "I'm Captain Taemin, Korean Space Defense Corps. You must be the Federation observer." "Yes," Kix managed, breathing heavily even with her suit's assistance. "I'm Liaison Kix. I'm here to assess your capabilities." Captain Taemin's smile got wider. "Excellent. I've prepared a full demonstration. Would you like to start with our recreational facilities?" Recreational facilities? Chiksh had expected to see military bases and weapons factories, but Captain Taemin led her to what appeared to be a large pool filled with the same liquid that covered most of Earth's surface. "This is one of our public swimming areas," he explained, "very popular with families." As they watched, dozens of humans jumped into the liquid. They moved through it easily, even playing games. Children who couldn't have been more than a few years old were splashing around happily. "That liquid, Chiksh," said faintly. "Our scientists identified it as a universal solvent. It should dissolve organic tissue on contact." "Water?" Captain Taemin looked confused. "It's essential for life. We're about 70% water ourselves. Here, try some." He offered her a container filled with the clear liquid. Kix backed away so fast she nearly fell over. "I see," Captain Taemin said, understanding. "Different biology. No problem. Let me show you our mountain climbing facilities." The mountain climbing area was worse. Humans were scaling vertical rock, faces hundreds of meters high. They used only simple ropes and metal tools. Some of them were climbing with no safety equipment at all. "This is called free climbing," Captain Taman explained. "It's a popular hobby. That woman there?" He pointed to a human female hanging from the rock face by her fingertips. "She's a kindergarten teacher. Does this every weekend for fun." "Fun?" Kiksh's voice came out as a squeak. "Oh yes, we have much more exciting sports. Would you like to see base jumping? Or maybe motorcycle racing?" Before Kitch could protest, Captain Taman was leading her to another area. Here, humans were throwing, themselves off high platforms with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Others were racing on two-wheeled vehicles at speeds that would be lethal if they crashed. "This is what you do for entertainment?" Chiksh asked. "Some of us," Captain Taman said. "Others prefer quieter activities. Reading, music, cooking." "Cooking?" "Yes. Would you like to see our restaurant district?" The restaurant was another nightmare. Kiksh watched in horror as humans consumed substances that her suit's scanners identified as toxins. One table was eating something that registered as a powerful acid. Another was consuming what appeared to be the processed flesh of Earth's native. "Predators. That red powder they're adding to their food," she whispered. "My scanners say it's capsaicin. That's a chemical weapon." "Chili pepper," Captain Taman said happily. "Makes food more interesting. And that group over there is having a drinking contest with ethanol. Want to join them?" Ethanol was what Federation ships used as engine coolant. The humans were drinking it and laughing. "I think I need to sit down," Kiksh said. "Of course, long day. Would you like something to drink? We have water, juice, coffee." "What's coffee?" "Stimulant beverage. We extract caffeine from plant seeds and mix it with hot water. Most humans drink several cups a day. Caffeine was a powerful drug used in Federation emergency medical kits. These humans were using it as a casual beverage." Captain Taman seemed to notice her distress. "Are you feeling well? You look a bit pale. Well, more pale than usual." "I'm fine," Chich lied. "Tell me about your military capabilities." Getting to business. Good. Our soldiers are trained under conditions similar to what you've seen today. We believe in preparing for the worst possible situations." "Worse than this?" "Oh, yes. Earth has many different environments. Deserts where the temperature can kill you in minutes. Frozen regions where exposed skin freezes instantly. Jungles filled with predators and diseases. Mountains where the air is too thin to breathe. Our military trains in all of them. And your soldiers enjoy this? The good ones do. We have a saying, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right." As the day went on, Chich saw more impossibilities. Humans who worked in environments that would kill most species. Children playing games that looked like combat training. Elderly humans who casually did things that would challenge Federation special forces. By the time she returned to her ship, Chich was exhausted. Her pilot took one look at her and immediately began emergency departure procedures. "Ma'am, what did you learn?" Chich sat in her chair and tried to process what she had seen. These humans lived on a world that wanted to kill them every moment of every day. And they had turned survival into entertainment. "They're either the most insane species in the galaxy," she said finally, "or the most dangerous. Which do you think they are?" Chich thought about the humans she had met. Captain Taman's easy smile as he showed her horrors that would give most species nightmares. The children playing in acid pools, the elderly teacher hanging from a cliff face for fun. "Both," she said. "Definitely both." As her ship left Earth's orbit, Kix began composing her report. The Federation had asked for warriors. What they were getting was something much more frightening. They were getting a species that had turned a death world into a playground. The human fleet arrived exactly when Commander Day-Ho had promised. 50 ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, where Federation forces were making their stand against the advancing Vrex Empire. Admiral Zenth of the Federation. Navy watched the human vessels on his display screens. They looked primitive compared to Federation technology. Bulky fusion drives instead of elegant antimatter engines. Thick metal hulls instead of energy shields. Weapons that appeared to be simple projectile launchers. They looked like museum pieces, his tactical officer muttered. Perhaps, Admiral Zenth said carefully. But they're here, and we need all the help we can get. A communication came through from the lead human ship. The voice was calm and professional. Federation Command, this is Lieutenant Colonel Su Jin of the 1st Terran Assault Division, requesting permission to come aboard for briefing. Permission. Granted, Admiral Zenth replied. Use Docking Bay 7. He had read Liaison Keech's report about her visit to Earth. It had been so strange that he had wondered if she was suffering from some kind of breakdown. Humans who lived on a death world and treated deadly situations as entertainment? It seemed impossible. 20 minutes later, Lieutenant Colonel Su Jin arrived in the briefing room. She was a compact human female who moved with obvious military bearing. What surprised Admiral Zenth was that she wore only a light uniform, no environmental suit or protective gear. The atmospheric conditions on this station are comfortable for your species, he asked. Very comfortable, Su Jin replied with a slight smile. Almost too easy, actually. The gravity is only half what we're used to, and the air is much cleaner than most of our cities. Admiral Zenth exchanged glances with his staff. This space station maintained environmental conditions that were optimal for most Federation species. The humans found them too easy. Let me brief you on the tactical situation, Admiral Zenth began, activating the holographic display. The Vrex Empire has been advancing through this sector for the past month. They've taken 12 systems so far. Their bioships are heavily armored and their ground forces are formidable. The display showed images of Vrex warriors. 2.5 meters tall, 4 arms ending in razor claws, thick armored skin that could stop most energy weapons. Su Jin studied the images carefully. What's their preferred combat doctrine? Terror tactics, Admiral Zenth said grimly. They attack with overwhelming force, using bioweapons to cause maximum psychological trauma. Most defenders surrender or flee rather than face them in direct combat. I see. Su Jin made notes on a small device. What about their numbers in each assault? Usually 10 to 20,000 per world, supported by their bioships and war beasts. And you've been losing? Admiral Zenth felt his pride sting, but he had to be honest. Yes. Our forces aren't trained for this kind of warfare. We haven't fought a real war in over 2 centuries. Su Jin nodded thoughtfully. What kind of defensive positions are available? I'm not sure I understand. Where do you need us most? The most dangerous assignments? The positions where other forces have failed? Admiral Zenth was confused. Most military advisors asked for the safest assignments for their troops, at least until they understood the situation better. Well, he said slowly, the Vrex are planning a major assault on the Rigel mining colonies. It's a 3-world system, with extensive underground facilities. Very dangerous fighting. We've already lost 2 defense fleets there. Perfect, Su Jin said immediately. We'll take that assignment. Are you sure? The casualty rates have been extremely high. The underground fighting is particularly brutal. That's exactly what we're looking for. Sujin said. My troops volunteered specifically for the most dangerous assignments available. They'd be disappointed with anything less. Admiral Zenth stared at her. Your soldiers want the most dangerous missions? Of course. Any soldier can handle easy fights. We're here to do the jobs that other species can't. Before Admiral Zenth could respond, his communications officer interrupted. Sir, we're receiving multiple requests from the human ships. What kind of requests? They're asking about environmental conditions on various worlds. But their questions are unusual. Admiral Zenth looked at the list. The humans were asking about worlds with toxic atmospheres, extreme gravity, deadly native life forms, and hostile weather patterns. They want to know which assignments would be most dangerous? He asked. Yes, sir. And they're requesting priority for those missions. Sujin smiled. My troops have been training on Earth for years. They're used to hostile environments. What you consider deadly, we consider normal working conditions. But surely you'd prefer safer assignments while you learn our tactics. Admiral, Sujin said patiently, my soldiers come from a world where the weather can kill you, the water can drown you, the air can poison you, and the local wildlife considers you food. They've been preparing for combat in hostile environments their entire lives. She gestured to the tactical display showing Vrek's forces. These enemies are big and strong and scary, but they're not any worse than what we deal with at home. Admiral, Zenth was beginning to understand why Liaison Kitch's report had been so strange. These humans didn't just tolerate hostile conditions, they preferred them. There's one more thing, Sujin said. My troops will need to coordinate with your medical teams. Of course, combat injuries are always a concern. Not for treatment, Sujin clarified. For the prisoners we'll be taking. Human interrogation methods might be unsettling for your medical staff. Interrogation methods? Nothing harmful, Sujin assured him. We just have different ideas about psychological pressure. What seems normal to us might seem extreme to species that didn't evolve as predators. The word predators sent a chill through the briefing room. Most Federation species were descended from prey animals or peaceful omnivores. The idea of working with natural predators was deeply disturbing. I think we're ready to begin deployment, Sujin said, standing up. My division commanders are eager to get started. When can we expect the first Vrex attack? Intelligence suggests they'll hit the Rigel system within 48 hours. Excellent. We'll be in position in 12 hours. Is there anything else we need to know? Admiral Zenth looked at his tactical display again. 50,000 human troops against millions of Vrex warriors. By all logic, it should be a massacre. But something about Lieutenant Colonel Sujin's confidence made him think the massacre might not go the way everyone expected. Good luck, he said finally. Sujin smiled again. Thank you, Admiral. But luck is what you need when you're not prepared. We've been preparing for this our whole lives. As the human commander left the briefing room, Admiral Zenth turned to his staff. What do you think? He asked. His tactical officer looked thoughtful. Either they're the most arrogant species in the galaxy, or they know something we don't. Admiral Zenth nodded. In 48 hours, they would find out which one it was. Across the system, human forces moved into position. 50,000 soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous job in the galaxy. They were finally getting the chance to do what they had trained for their entire lives. The Vrex Empire was about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. Except in this case, the immovable object had evolved on a world that tried to kill it every single day. The human fleet arrived exactly when Commander De Ho had promised. 50 ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, where Federation forces were making their stand against the advancing Vrex Empire. Admiral Zenth of the Federation. Navy watched the human vessels on his display screens. They looked primitive compared to Federation technology. Bulky fusion drives instead of elegant antimatter engines. Thick metal hulls instead of energy shields. Weapons that appeared to be simple projectile launchers. They looked like museum pieces, his tactical officer muttered. Perhaps, Admiral Zenth said carefully. But they're here, and we need all the help we can get. A communication came through from the lead human ship. The voice was calm and professional. Federation Command, this is Lieutenant Colonel Su Jin of the 1st Terran Assault Division, requesting permission to come aboard for briefing. Permission. Granted, Admiral Zenth replied. Use Docking Bay 7. He had read Liaison Keech's report about her visit to Earth. It had been so strange that he had wondered if she was suffering from some kind of breakdown. Humans who lived on a death world and treated deadly situations as entertainment? It seemed impossible. 20 minutes later, Lieutenant Colonel Su Jin arrived in the briefing room. She was a compact human female who moved with obvious military bearing. What surprised Admiral Zenth was that she wore only a light uniform, no environmental suit or protective gear. The atmospheric conditions on this station are comfortable for your species, he asked. Very comfortable, Su Jin replied with a slight smile. Almost too easy, actually. The gravity is only half what we're used to, and the air is much cleaner than most of our cities. Admiral Zenth exchanged glances with his staff. This space station maintained environmental conditions that were optimal for most Federation species. The humans found them too easy. Let me brief you on the tactical situation, Admiral Zenth began, activating the holographic display. The Vrex Empire has been advancing through this sector for the past month. They've taken 12 systems so far. Their bioships are heavily armored and their ground forces are formidable. The display showed images of Vrex warriors, 2.5 meters tall, 4 arms ending in razor claws, thick armored skin that could stop most energy weapons. Su Jin studied the images carefully. What's their preferred combat doctrine? Terror tactics, Admiral Zenth said grimly. They attack with overwhelming force, using bioweapons to cause maximum psychological trauma. Most defenders surrender or flee rather than face them in direct combat. I see. Su Jin made notes on a small device. What about their numbers in each assault? Usually 10 to 20,000 per world, supported by their bioships and war beasts. And you've been losing? Admiral Zenth felt his pride sting, but he had to be honest. Yes, our forces aren't trained for this kind of warfare. We haven't fought a real war in over 2 centuries. Su Jin nodded thoughtfully. What kind of defensive positions are available? I'm not sure I understand. Where do you need us most? The most dangerous assignments? The positions where other forces have failed? Admiral Zenth was confused. Most military advisors asked for the safest assignments for their troops, at least until they understood the situation better. Well, he said slowly, the Vrex are planning a major assault on the Rigel mining colonies. It's a 3-world system, with extensive underground facilities. Very dangerous fighting. We've already lost 2 defense fleets there. Perfect, Su Jin said immediately. We'll take that assignment. Are you sure? The casualty rates have been extremely high. The underground fighting is particularly brutal. That's exactly what we're looking for, Su Jin said. My troops volunteered specifically for the most dangerous assignments available. They'd be disappointed with anything less. Admiral Zenth stared at her. Your soldiers want the most dangerous missions? Of course, any soldier can handle easy fights. We're here to do the jobs that other species can't. Before Admiral Zenth could respond, his communications officer interrupted. Sir, we're receiving multiple requests from the human ships. What kind of requests? They're asking about environmental conditions on various worlds. But their questions are unusual. Admiral Zenth looked at the list. The humans were asking about worlds with toxic atmospheres, extreme gravity, deadly native life forms, and hostile weather patterns. They want to know which assignments would be most dangerous? He asked. Yes, sir. And they're requesting priority for those missions. Sujin smiled. My troops have been training on Earth for years. They're used to hostile environments. What you consider deadly, we consider normal working conditions. But surely you'd prefer safer assignments while you learn our tactics. Admiral, Sujin said patiently, my soldiers come from a world where the weather can kill you, the water can drown you, the air can poison you, and the local wildlife considers you food. They've been preparing for combat in hostile environments their entire lives. She gestured to the tactical display showing Vrek's forces. These enemies are big and strong and scary, but they're not any worse than what we deal with at home. Admiral, Zenth was beginning to understand why Liaison Kitch's report had been so strange. These humans didn't just tolerate hostile conditions, they preferred them. There's one more thing, Sujin said. My troops will need to coordinate with your medical teams. Of course, combat injuries are always a concern. Not for treatment, Sujin clarified. For the prisoners we'll be taking. Human interrogation methods might be unsettling for your medical staff. Interrogation methods? Nothing harmful, Sujin assured him. We just have different ideas about psychological pressure. What seems normal to us might seem extreme to species that didn't evolve as predators. The word predators sent a chill through the briefing room. Most Federation species were descended from prey animals or peaceful omnivores. The idea of working with natural predators was deeply disturbing. I think we're ready to begin deployment, Sujin said, standing up. My division commanders are eager to get started. When can we expect the first Vrex attack? Intelligence suggests they'll hit the Rigel system within 48 hours. Excellent. We'll be in position in 12 hours. Is there anything else we need to know? Admiral Zenth looked at his tactical display again. 50,000 human troops against millions of Vrex warriors. By all logic, it should be a massacre. But something about Lieutenant Colonel Sujin's confidence made him think the massacre might not go the way everyone expected. Good luck, he said finally. Sujin smiled again. Thank you, Admiral. But luck is what you need when you're not prepared. We've been preparing for this our whole lives. As the human commander left the briefing room, Admiral Zenth turned to his staff. What do you think? He asked. His tactical officer looked thoughtful. Either they're the most arrogant species in the galaxy, or they know something we don't. Admiral Zenth nodded. In 48 hours, they would find out which one it was. Across the system, human forces moved into position. 50,000 soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous job in the galaxy. They were finally getting the chance to do what they had trained for their entire lives. The Vrex Empire was about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. Except in this case, the immovable object had evolved on a world that tried to kill it every single day. The Vrex High Command made their decision after reviewing the disaster at Kepler Station. These humans were unlike any enemy they had faced before. Normal terror tactics had failed completely. Even their bioweapons had been turned against them. But the Vrex had one advantage that had never failed them before. They would retreat to their fortress world of Skarnog, deep in the toxic nebula they called home. The nebula's radiation would kill most species in hours. Skarnog itself had an atmosphere of poisonous gas and gravity that could crush normal life forms. Let the humans try to follow them there. Captain Jin Ho received the news that the Vrex were retreating to their stronghold with obvious pleasure. He had been hoping for exactly this kind of opportunity. Finally, he said to his rangers, a real challenge. His unit specialized in what humans called extreme environment operations. They had trained in Earth's most hostile locations, the deep ocean trenches, the volcanic regions, the frozen polar wastes, and the radioactive zones left over from humanity's earlier, less careful experiments with atomic energy. "What's the environmental data on this Skarnog place?" asked Sergeant Boram, his weapons specialist. "Gravity about 4 times Earth normal," Jin Ho read from his briefing pad. "Atmospheric composition is mostly methane and sulfur compounds. Surface temperature ranges from -50 to +200 Celsius. Radiation levels that would kill most Federation species in under 6 hours. His rangers looked at each other and grinned. "So, basically like a camping trip to Siberia with some extra radiation?" suggested Corporal Yun Ah. "Pretty much," Jin Ho agreed. "Except with giant bug monsters trying to kill us." "Perfect," said Sergeant Boram. "I was getting bored with these easy assignments." The human assault force began their approach to the Skarnog system 3 days later. Federation Command had advised against the mission, pointing out that the environmental conditions would be lethal to human forces. Lieutenant Colonel Su Jin had responded by asking if they had any more dangerous assignments available. As the human ships entered the toxic nebula surrounding Skarnog, the crews went about their duties with calm efficiency. The radiation that would cook most species in hours was blocked by their ship's simple but effective shielding. The electromagnetic interference that scrambled advanced Federation electronics had no effect on human equipment, which had been designed to work in Earth's electromagnetically noisy environment. "Approaching Skarnog orbit," reported the ship's navigator. "Scanning for enemy positions. Multiple bio-ships in orbit," came the tactical report. "Looks like they're expecting us." Captain Jin Ho studied the enemy positions through his viewport. The Vrex had arranged their forces in what they probably thought was an impregnable defense. Bio-ships formed overlapping fields of fire around the planet. Ground-based weapons covered every possible landing site. It was exactly the kind of impossible tactical situation that human military doctrine had been designed to handle. "All units, prepare for atmospheric entry," Jin Ho announced. "We're going in hot." The human assault craft dove into Skarnog's poisonous atmosphere like stones thrown into water. The Vrex orbital defenses opened fire immediately, filling the sky with bioplasma and acid projectiles. Most of the human craft made it through the defensive fire. Those that didn't simply adapted their landing plans. Damaged ships became improvised meteors, their crews using emergency pods to land in different locations than originally planned. Jin Ho's pod crashed into the swampy terrain of Skarnog's equatorial region. The impact would have killed most species, but human bones and organs were designed to handle high-G forces. He and his rangers climbed out of their smoking pod and looked around at their new environment. The ground was covered in a thick, oily liquid that bubbled with toxic gases. The air was filled with floating spores that would cause organ failure in most life forms. Strange biomechanical structures rose from the swamp like twisted trees made of metal and flesh. "Beautiful morning for a hike," commented Sergeant Boram, checking his equipment. The Rangers began moving toward their objective, the Vrex command bunker located at the planet's north pole. It was over 3,000 kilometers away, through some of the most hostile terrain in the galaxy. The Vrex had expected the humans to use vehicles or aircraft to cross such distances. Instead, they walked. Human persistence hunting was an evolutionary adaptation that had allowed early humans to chase down prey animals much faster and stronger than themselves. The humans couldn't outrun their prey, but they could outlast them. They could keep moving when everything else had to stop and rest. The Vrex bioenhancements that gave them incredible speed and strength were designed for short bursts of activity. After an hour of combat, they needed rest and recovery time. The humans just kept walking. Day after day, Captain Jinho's Rangers moved across Skarnog's deadly landscape. When Vrex patrols attacked them, they fought just long enough to disable or scatter the enemy, then continued their march. When bioweapons tried to stop them, they found ways around or through the obstacles. When the toxic environment began to affect their equipment, they adapted. Sergeant Boram discovered that Vrex biometal could be shaped into effective tools and weapons. The Rangers began to look more like natives of Skarnog than human soldiers, their gear decorated with captured Vrex technology. Contact report, came a transmission from another human unit. We've been under attack for 6 hours straight. Enemy forces keep trying to surround us, but they have to stop and rest every few hours. We just keep moving. Similar reports came in from human forces all across the planet. The Vrex would launch massive attacks with overwhelming force, fight until their bioenhancements were exhausted, then retreat to recover. The humans would simply continue their advance during the enemy rest periods. Dr. Yun-ji, a biochemist who had volunteered for combat duty, was fascinated by what she was seeing. Her unit had been fighting the same group of Vrex warriors for 3 days now. They're incredible fighters, she reported to her commander. Stronger than anything Earth ever produced, faster than our best athletes, armed with weapons that can cut through steel. But they can only maintain peak performance for short periods. And then they have to rest. Their biosystems need time to regenerate. We've been monitoring their attack patterns. They fight for 2 hours, then need 4 hours of recovery. Time. What about us? Dr. Yunji looked around at her fellow soldiers. They were tired, dirty, and running low on supplies. But they were still moving forward. We can maintain 70% combat effectiveness indefinitely, she said. Our evolutionary advantages aren't in short-term performance. They're in endurance. The psychological effect on the Vrex forces was devastating. These humans didn't fight like normal enemies. They didn't retreat when they were outnumbered. They didn't stop when they were tired. They didn't give up when the situation looked hopeless. They just kept coming. They're like a force of nature, one captured Vrex warrior told his interrogators. You can fight a storm, but you can't defeat it. You can only wait for it to pass. But these humans never pass. They never stop. 3 weeks after the assault began, Captain Jinho and his Rangers reached the Vrex command bunker at Skarnog's North Pole. They had walked 3,000 kilometers through some of the most hostile terrain in the galaxy. They had fought dozens of battles. They had survived environmental conditions that would have killed most species in hours, and they were still ready to fight. The Vrex defenders of the command bunker had been preparing for this moment for weeks. They had every advantage. Superior. Numbers, advanced weapons, prepared positions, and home field advantage. But they had made one critical mistake. They had gotten tired. The humans were tired too, but they had evolved to function while tired. To keep going when everything else had stopped. To outlast anything that tried to stop them. The battle for the command bunker lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Vrex High Command was in human custody, and Skarnog was under human control. Mission accomplished, Captain Jin-Ho reported. Fortress world secured. What's our next assignment? Back at Federation headquarters, Admiral Zenth stared at the reports coming in from Skarnog. A human force of 50,000 had defeated a Vrex army of over 2 million. How is this possible? He asked. Liaison Kish, who had been monitoring the human forces, had an answer. They don't fight like us, she said. We fight until we can't. Fight anymore, then we retreat or surrender. They fight until they win or die, and they're very hard to kill. The Vrex High Command met an emergency session aboard their primary bioship, hidden in the dark space between galaxies. For the first time in their species' history, they were losing a war. The reports from their field commanders made no sense. These humans were supposed to be primitive beings from a backwater world, but they had adapted to every Vrex advantage and turned their own bioweapons against them. Explain to me how 50,000 primitives defeated 2 million of our warriors, the Supreme Overlord demanded. Field Commander Vorthok, one of the few survivors from Skarnog, tried to find words for what he had witnessed. They are not like other species, he said finally. When we deploy terror weapons, they show interest instead of fear. When we use biotoxins, they analyze the chemical composition and develop countermeasures. When we attack with superior numbers, they adapt their tactics in real time. Impossible. No species can adapt that quickly. I have seen it myself, Vorthak insisted. Watch this recording. The holographic display showed Sergeant Nari's squad during their third encounter with Vrex, paralytic toxins. The first time, the toxins had affected them normally, causing temporary paralysis and disorientation. The second time, the effects had been reduced. By the third exposure, the humans were showing no symptoms at all. How? Whispered the Supreme. Overlord. Their medical officer called it acquired immunity, Vorthak replied. Apparently, their species developed this ability to survive the constant biological threats on their homeworld. Dr. Min Jun had been fascinated by the human immune response to Vrex bioweapons. What the aliens saw as impossible adaptation was actually a normal function of human biology. It's just like getting vaccinated, she explained to her commanding officer. Our immune systems analyze new threats and develop specific responses. A few hours of exposure to non-lethal doses, and we're essentially immune to most of their biological attacks. She gestured to her medical bay, where human soldiers were being deliberately exposed to captured Vrex toxins under controlled conditions. We're essentially turning their weapons into training aids. Every bioweapon they use against us makes us stronger against future attacks. But the humans weren't just adapting to Vrex weapons. They were improving them. Engineer Boram had become fascinated with Vrex biotechnology during the Skarnog campaign. The alien equipment was incredibly advanced, but it was designed for Vrex biology and tactics. Look at this, she said, showing her squad the modified Vrex carapace armor she had created. Their original design was optimized for their four-armed body structure and their combat style. But if you modify it for human proportions and add some improvements, the result was armor that was lighter, more flexible, and better protected than anything the Federation had ever seen. More importantly, it was built using principles that human engineers understood from studying Earth's insects and crustaceans. Beetles, crabs, lobsters, Boram explained. We've been dealing with natural armor designs for millions of years. The Vrex think their biotechnology is unique, but Earth's tide pools have better engineering. Within weeks, human forces were wearing armor that was superior to original Vrex designs. They were using weapons that combined Vrex biotechnology with human engineering principles. They were turning the aliens' greatest advantages into human strengths. The Vrex Supreme Overlord decided to deploy their ultimate weapon, the psychic terror wave generators that could drive entire species insane with primal fear. The devices had never failed before. They reached directly into the brain's fear centers and triggered every survival instinct simultaneously. Most species would either flee in panic or collapse into catatonic terror. The human's response was completely unexpected. "Contact front!" Corporal Yuna called out as the terror wave hit her position. She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as her body's fight-or-flight response kicked in. But instead of choosing flight, she chose fight. "I love this feeling," she shouted, charging toward the VREX positions with her squad behind her. The terror wave had triggered the human adrenaline response, but humans had evolved to use adrenaline as a combat enhancement rather than a reason to flee. Dr. Yunji monitored the human response to the psychic attacks with scientific interest. The Vrex terror waves were indeed affecting human brain chemistry, but not in the way the aliens expected. Increased heart rate, improved reflexes, enhanced pain tolerance, elevated aggression levels, she reported. "The enemy's fear weapon is acting like a combat stimulant. Are the troops in any danger?" "Only if they run out of enemies to fight," Dr. Yunji replied. "The adrenaline response is making them more effective, not less." Across the battlefield, human soldiers were experiencing what they called an adrenaline rush. The VREX terror waves, designed to incapacitate enemies with fear, were instead giving humans a natural high that made them fight even more aggressively. The psychological effect on the Vrex was devastating. Their ultimate weapon was not only failing to stop the humans, it was making them more dangerous. "Fall back," Field Commander Vorthak ordered. "Retreat to the reserve positions." But retreat was no longer an option. The humans had learned to track Vrex movements through their biosignatures. Every retreat route was already covered by human forces who had somehow anticipated the Vrex withdrawal. Major Wu Sung had studied the alien retreat patterns and identified their tactical preferences. The Vrex always fell back to positions that offered multiple escape routes and good defensive coverage. "They're predictable," he explained to his officers. "They think like prey animals that have become predators. When threatened, they still react like prey first. They always leave themselves escape routes. And that's a weakness? For us, yes. Humans evolved as persistence predators. We don't need escape routes because we don't retreat. We just need to know where our prey is going to run." The human tactical doctrine had adapted to treat Vrex forces like any other prey animal. Study their behavior patterns, predict their movements, cut off their escape routes, wait for them to exhaust themselves, then close in for the kill. General Yunji, commanding the human forces in the sector, received reports from all her units. The Vrex were throwing everything they had at the human positions. Bioweapons, terror attacks, overwhelming numbers, superior technology, and the humans were not just surviving. They were thriving. "Status report from all units," she requested. "First, battalion reports complete adaptation to enemy bioweapons," came the first response, requesting permission to begin field testing of improved versions. "Second battalion has reverse-engineered enemy armor systems," came the second. "New designs are 30% more effective than original Vrex specifications." Third battalion reports that enemy terror weapons are improving combat effectiveness by an average of 15%. General Yunji smiled. The Vrex had made a fundamental mistake. They had assumed that humans were just another Federation species, peaceful, civilized, and adapted to safe environments. Instead, they had encountered a species that had evolved in constant conflict with the deadliest world in the galaxy, AA. Species that had turned survival into an art form and adaptation into a science. The Vrex Empire had brought war to beings who considered war to be a natural part of existence, and the humans were winning. All units, General Yoon-ji announced. Prepare for final advance. The enemy is running out of surprises. She looked at the tactical display showing Vrex forces in full retreat. For the first time in their species' history, the Vrex were afraid. They had finally encountered something more dangerous than they were. Evolution had spent millions of years creating the perfect predator on Earth. Now that predator was loose in the galaxy, and it was hungry. The Vrex homeworld of Nexus Prime had never been attacked before. For 3,000 years, it had been the center of an empire that conquered and consumed other species. The planet itself was a fortress, protected by bioshields, orbital defense, platforms, and armies of warrior breeds that had never known defeat. But as General Yoon-ji's human forces approached the system, something unprecedented happened. The Vrex were afraid. Long-range scanners show massive defensive preparations, reported Lieutenant Colonel Su-jin from the lead ship. They've recalled every available unit to defend their homeworld. General Yoon-ji studied the tactical display. Over 10 million Vrex warriors were dug in around the planet. Bioships the size of mountains orbited overhead. The planet's surface bristled with weapons that could crack moons. Looks like they're finally taking us seriously, she observed. Should we request reinforcements? Asked Major Woo-sung. The odds are pretty extreme, even for us. General Yoon-ji looked around at her staff. These were officers who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in the galaxy. They had fought their way through hostile space, adapted to alien bioweapons, and turned every Vrex advantage against them. What do you think? She asked. Are 10 million Vrex enough to make this interesting? The room was quiet for a moment. Then Major Woo-sung smiled. It's a start, he said. The assault on Nexus Prime began with something the Vrex had never experienced, a human psychological warfare campaign. Colonel Sang-woo, who had specialized in extreme environment survival, broadcasted a message to the Vrex defenders on all frequencies. Attention, Vrex forces, his voice echoed across the planet. We are humans from Earth. We have come a very long way for this fight. We hope you will provide better entertainment than your warriors on Skarnog and Kepler Station. He paused, then added, We brought camping gear. The psychological impact was immediate. The humans weren't threatening the Vrex with destruction or demanding surrender. They were treating the defense of the Vrex homeworld like a weekend camping trip. The Vrex Supreme Overlord, commanding the defense from his fortress bunker, couldn't understand what he was hearing. Camping gear? He asked his advisors. What does that mean? None of them knew, but somehow the casual tone was more terrifying than any battle cry would have been. The human landing craft began their descent through the planet's atmosphere. The Vrex orbital defenses opened fire with everything they had. Bioplasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids, acid projectors that could eat through any known armor, energy weapons that could boil oceans. Most of the human craft made it through. The defensive fire, those that didn't simply use their crashes as tactical opportunities. Captain Jin-ho's Rangers had been assigned to assault the planet's most heavily defended fortress. Their transport had been hit by 3 different weapon systems and was falling out of control toward the surface. Emergency landing procedures, Jin-Ho announced calmly. "Prepare for hard impact. The crash would have killed most species instantly." The Rangers climbed out of the wreckage, checked their equipment, and looked around at their surroundings. They had landed in the middle of a Vrex military complex. Thousands of enemy warriors surrounded them. Bioweapons were being aimed at their position from every direction. "Well," said Sergeant Boram, checking her modified Vrex armor, "at least we don't have to walk far to find the enemy. The battle for the military complex should have lasted minutes. 50 human soldiers against 5,000 Vrex warriors in prepared positions. Instead, it became a demonstration of why Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. The humans didn't fight like the Vrex expected. They didn't form battle lines or charge the enemy positions. They moved like pack hunters, appearing from unexpected directions, striking at weak points, then disappearing before the Vrex could respond. More disturbing, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Contact left, 300 meters, called out. Corporal Yuna as a group of Vrex war beasts charged their position. "I see them," replied Private Day Young, setting up his improvised Vrex bio cannon. "These look bigger than the ones on Skarnog." "About time," Yuna said. "I was getting bored with the small ones." Dr. Yunji had been monitoring human stress responses during combat operations. What she found would have been impossible to believe if she hadn't seen it herself. "Their adrenaline levels are elevated," she reported to General Yunji, "but not from fear or desperation. The biochemical markers indicate they're experiencing something closer to excitement." "Excitement? Yes, ma'am. The combat stress response in humans appears to trigger pleasure centers in the brain. They're literally enjoying this." General Yunji wasn't surprised. She had felt the same thing during her first battle with the Vrex. The thrill of facing a truly dangerous enemy after years of training against Earth's hostile environment. "It makes sense," she said. "We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Fighting for survival became part of our nature. Now we're finally getting to do what we were born for." The Vrex defenders were beginning to understand that they weren't fighting normal enemies. These humans didn't retreat when they were outnumbered. They didn't panic when their positions were overrun. They adapted to every Vrex tactic and turned it against them. Worse, they were learning. Engineer Bo Ram had been studying Vrex biotechnology since the first battles. Now, deep in the heart of their homeworld, she was getting access to their most advanced systems. "Look at this," she said, examining a captured Vrex command center. "Their biocomputers are incredibly sophisticated, but they're based on principles we've seen before. Where? Ant colonies, beehives, any social insect species on Earth. The Vrex think they invented collective intelligence, but we've been studying it for centuries." Within hours, Boram had not only cracked the Vrex command systems, she had improved them. The humans began using the aliens' own communication networks against them, feeding false information and coordinating attacks from inside Vrex command structures. The Supreme Overlord watched his perfect defenses crumble one by one. Every weapon the Vrex deployed was studied, adapted, and turned against them. Every tactical advantage was neutralized by human flexibility and persistence. Finally, in desperation, he ordered the deployment of the Death Plague. The Death Plague was the Vrex Empire's ultimate weapon of last resort. A bioengineered virus that could kill any carbon-based life form within hours. It had never been used before because it would also kill the Vrex themselves. But facing extinction at the hands of these impossible humans, the Supreme Overlord was willing to sacrifice his own species to stop them. The plague canisters were released across the battlefield. Invisible death spread through the air, designed to destroy every living cell it encountered. The humans should have died instantly. Instead, Dr. Yunji looked up from her field laboratory with interest. "Fascinating," she said, examining samples of the plague organism under her microscope. "It's actually quite elegant, similar to some of the viruses we deal with on Earth, but with interesting modifications." "Is it dangerous?" asked her assistant. "Oh, extremely," Dr. Yunji replied. "To most species, but our immune systems are already adapting. Give me about 6 hours and I should have a complete analysis." 6 hours? Well, maybe 4 if I skip lunch, but I'd also like to see if we can improve on their design. This could be very useful for sterilizing hostile environments. The Supreme Overlord received the report in stunned silence. His ultimate weapon, the plague that could kill any living thing, was being treated as an interesting research project by the humans, and they wanted to make it more effective. That was when he realized the truth. The Vrex Empire, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, had encountered something far more dangerous than they were. They had met a species that considered planetary extinction events to be learning opportunities. "Send the surrender signal," he ordered. "Sir, surrender. Now, before they decide we're too dangerous to leave alive." Across the galaxy, the message went out. For the first time in their history, the Vrex Empire was asking for mercy from the species they had been trying to kill. General Yunji received the surrender offer while her forces were still fighting their way toward the Vrex capital. She read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. "They want to surrender?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Unconditional surrender. They're offering to abandon all conquered territory and retreat to their home system." General Yunji looked around at her officers. They had been looking forward to the final assault on the Vrex capital. It would have been the most challenging fight of the war. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose we can't have everything." She opened a communication channel to the Vrex Supreme Overlord. "Surrender accepted," she said. "But you should know, we're keeping all the biotechnology samples we've collected for research purposes." The Supreme Overlord agreed immediately. Anything to get these terrifying humans to leave his world. As the human forces began their withdrawal, Colonel Sang-Woo made one final broadcast to the Vrex defenders. "Thank you for an interesting vacation," he announced. "Earth's travel agencies will be very interested in your world. I think we'll be back." It was, the Vrex Supreme Overlord realized, the most terrifying threat he had ever heard. The humans weren't just leaving, they were planning to come back. For fun. 6 months after the Vrex surrender, Ambassador So Young stood before the Galactic Federation Council in their Great Assembly Hall. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the chamber, all of them staring at the human diplomat with a mixture of awe and carefully hidden fear. "The Terran embassy is now fully operational," she announced with a warm smile. "We're ready to provide security services to any Federation member worlds facing existential threats." The phrase, security services, sent a ripple of nervous whispers through the assembly. Everyone had heard what human security services looked like. The Vrex Empire, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was now confined to a single star system and actively helping with Federation research projects. They were too terrified to do anything else. Ambassador Keth, who had sent out the original distress call, raised his hand to speak. "On behalf of the Federation, we want to thank the humans for their assistance in ending the Vrex threat," he said, carefully. "The galaxy is in your debt." "No debt necessary," So Young replied cheerfully. "We enjoyed the work. It was the most fun our military has had in decades." The word fun caused another wave of nervous murmurs. The humans had treated the deadliest war in galactic history as entertainment. "We do have some questions about human intentions," said Representative Zilton of the Crystalline Worlds. "Your military capabilities far exceed anything we've seen before. What are your long-term plans?" So, Young looked genuinely confused. "Plans? We don't have any plans for conquest, if that's what you're asking. Earth has everything we need. We just want to help out when people are in trouble." "But surely you must want something in return?" "Well," So Young said thoughtfully, "we would, like access to some of your entertainment media. Our people are very interested in alien movies and music. And maybe some cultural exchange programs?" The Federation representatives exchanged glances. The most dangerous military force in the galaxy wanted to trade movies and set up student exchange programs. "That can certainly be arranged, Ambassador," Keth said quickly. Admiral Yunwu, who had been appointed as the first human member of the Galactic Security Council, took the podium next. "We've been analyzing the lessons learned from the Vrex conflict," he announced. "Federation military doctrine needs some updating." He activated a holographic display showing human combat techniques. First, the concept of acceptable losses needs to be redefined. Most Federation species retreat when casualties reach 5 to 10%. Humans consider 50% losses to be the point where you start thinking about tactical adjustments. Several representatives looked faint. Second, environmental hazards should be treated as tactical opportunities rather than obstacles. Hostile. Worlds aren't problems to be avoided. They're force multipliers for properly trained troops. Third, enemy weapons should be analyzed and improved rather than simply defended against. Every attack is a learning opportunity. Admiral Hyun-woo smiled at the stunned silence that followed. "We'll be establishing training programs for any Federation species that want to upgrade their military capabilities. Fair warning, though, the training takes place on Earth. No one volunteered." The session was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Federation's outer monitoring stations. "Unknown fleet approaching from the galactic rim," came the report. "Massive ships. Aggressive. Configuration. They're broadcasting surrender demands in multiple languages." The assembly hall erupted in panic. Another invasion, so soon after the Vrex War. The Federation military was still rebuilding. They couldn't handle another conflict. Ambassador So Young calmly activated her personal communicator. "Earth Command. This is Ambassador So Young. We have another situation developing. Hostile fleet, unknown species, surrender demands." "Copy that," came the immediate reply. "How many ships?" "Stand by." So Young consulted the tactical display. "Approximately 500 vessels. Dreadnought class or larger." "Understood. Do you want the full expeditionary force or just a rapid response unit?" So Young looked around at the panicking Federation representatives. "Better send the full force," she said. "This looks like it might be entertaining." Within hours, human ships were arriving in the outer system. Not just military vessels this time. The news of another galactic conflict had attracted human civilians as well. Adventure tourists, extreme sports enthusiasts, and what humans called war correspondents were all demanding to get close to the action. The new enemy called themselves the Ravager Horde. They were a nomadic species that moved from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all resources and enslaving or destroying local populations. They had conquered 12 galaxies before arriving in the Milky Way. Their commander, Supreme Warlord Krex, had never encountered serious resistance before. His species was genetically engineered for war, each individual capable of fighting dozens of normal beings. Their technology was designed for one purpose: overwhelming destruction. The Federation should have been an easy conquest. But when Krex's advanced scouts encountered the human response fleet, they sent back reports that made no sense. "The enemy ships are primitive," reported Scout Commander Vex. "Simple fusion drives, basic armor, primitive weapons, but what? They're playing music, sir, very loud music, and their communications are full of what appears to be laughter? Laughter? Yes, sir. They seem to be enjoying themselves. Also, several of their ships have civilian markings. I think they brought tourists." Supreme Warlord Krex had conquered 12 galaxies. He had never encountered enemies who brought tourists to a battle. Tekama. First engagement took place near the system's outer planets. A dozen Ravager heavy cruisers attacked a single human destroyer that had gotten separated from the main fleet. The human ship's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Taemin of the Korean Space Defense Corps. Thanks for finding us. We were getting lonely out here. Hope you're ready for a good fight." The Ravager ships opened fire with weapons that could shatter moons. The human destroyer should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, it began what humans called evasive maneuvers. The ship twisted and turned through space like it was dancing, avoiding fire that should have been impossible to dodge. When it did take hits, systems that should have failed kept working. "How are they still functional?" demanded the Ravager squadron leader. "Unknown, sir. Their ship appears to be held together with what their crew calls duct tape and prayers." "That's not possible." "Nevertheless, sir, it's working. The human destroyer not only survived the engagement, it began picking off Ravager ships one by one." Human weapons were primitive by galactic standards, but they were being used with impossible precision and creativity. When the battle was over, 11 Ravager cruisers were disabled or destroyed. The human destroyer was still operational, though barely. "Status report," Captain Taemin called out as his crew celebrated. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, came the reply. "Life support failing in 6 compartments. Main engines operating at 12%. Weapon systems jury-rigged with spare parts." "Outstanding," Taemin said happily. "Just the way we like it. Signal the fleet. We found the party." Supreme Warlord Krex received reports from the battle with growing disbelief. A single primitive ship had defeated a squadron of his best cruisers. The human crew had treated near-certain death as entertainment. "What are these humans?" he demanded. His intelligence officer had been studying captured Federation databases. "They appear to be from a Class 12 Deathworld," she reported. "Their home planet is so hostile that most species classify it as uninhabitable. And they evolved. There?" "Yes, sir. For millions of years. Their evolution was shaped by constant environmental threats, predation, and resource competition." Supreme Warlord Krex was beginning to understand. His species had been genetically engineered for war, but these humans had been naturally evolved for it. The main battle began 3 days later. 500 Ravager dreadnoughts faced off against the human expeditionary force. By all logic, it should have been a massacre. It was, just not the massacre anyone expected. General Yunji, commanding the human forces, opened communications with the Ravager fleet. "Attention, Ravager Horde," she announced. "We are humans from Earth. We've heard you've conquered 12 galaxies. Impressive. We're looking forward to seeing what you can do." She paused, then added, "We brought snacks." The psychological warfare was devastating. The humans weren't intimidated by the Ravager Horde's reputation. They were treating galactic conquerors like interesting opponents in a sporting event. The battle that followed became legend throughout the galaxy. Human ships, outnumbered 10-1, tore through the Ravager fleet like wolves among sheep. They used tactics that no one had ever seen before, adapted to enemy weapons in real time, and fought with a joy that was visible even from long range. When it was over, the Ravager horde was no longer a horde. Most of their ships were disabled or destroyed. The survivors were asking for asylum. Supreme Warlord Krex found himself in a Federation detention center being interviewed by Dr. Min Jun. 12 galaxies? She asked, reviewing his file. That's quite impressive. What was your secret? We were bred for war, he said bitterly. Genetically perfect warriors with unlimited aggression and no fear of death.